panelists, Mr. Rajesh Khairajani, his partner KNAV, Mr. Sunil Sayal, his CFO India Region Nokia Solution, and Mr. Anil Khandelwal, Managing Partner Landprompt Advisor LLP. So I would pose my first question to Rajesh. How do you see fair valuation landscape change post-implementation of Ind-AS?
Just to give you a perspective of what's happening in India, I will take a cue from, where all this is basically coming from. I'll just take 2 minutes on the global, accounting profession and the valuation profession and how it's kind of evolving. And also, at the background, we have the new regulation, the 2013 Companies Act, and along with that, we have the 2017 rules for valuation and, registered valuers. The United States has around 4 to 5 valuation professional bodies, which, in turn impart education on valuation and also do a lot of, thought leadership in terms of how a particular financial statement needs to be, while auditing is done by the by the auditors, but the fair valuation standard is something that is done by these guys. Irrespective of that, in spite of that, the PCAOB has on various occasions send out comment letters, and because of deficiencies on a financial statement. And these deficiencies predominantly are on account of fair valuation reporting. So the thing is that even if there are 5 professional bodies in the United States, there is an AICPA, there is an ASA, there is a NACWA. At the end of the day, the regulators feel the need that these financial statements need to be picked up because of certain financial statements irregularities, and financial, fair valuation is basically the crux of all of that. These bodies have now come together, and what they have now, thought of kind of, new credential in the United States, which is basically the CEIV. The CEIV talks about valuation professionals, but valuation for financial reporting. So this is, what you see in the United States are 2 separate set of, credential. One is a general valuation standard, and the second is valuation standard for financial reporting purposes. Now we come to India. We all know that Ind-AS, and it's a right move that we have Ind-AS. Most of the discussion on Ind-AS has been on the accounting aspects of Ind-AS. There are a lot of thought leaderships which have been going out. So all of us, me including, when we did our chartered accountancy, and if I look at an M&A, because nowadays the M&A is a flavor of the season, your post-combination balance sheet used to have this big chunk of goodwill reported based on the purchase price over and above the net asset, right? That has changed with the Ind-AS. So looking at the business combination standard, there is a need for recognizing various intangibles on your balance sheet. Well, the accounting aspect of that has been discussed in length. But what has been missing is basically the fair valuation, basically the measurement. So while you have done an acquisition, you believe that this customer relationship was great, let's go ahead and take this. They have some technology which is great. These are intangible that you're recognizing on your balance sheet. You know how to account for them. But what has been missing is how do you measure those, right? And even as of this date, I'm kind of, wanting that the ICAI, sets up a task force wherein, it looks at all these issues and kind of, educates everybody. Now, this will mean that the quality of financial statements will increase. Most of the stakeholders will actually benefit out of this. There is the investing public, there is the management, and then there is also the auditors, and then there are appraisers. All of them need to actually look at the United States, because there is no literature available. And they need to, this is what we do in practice in India as well. We actually look at the United States and look at some of the best practices being implemented there, and then we use it for our financial reporting purposes. So that is one of the biggest challenge to kind of implement in the truest sense. Accounting is one bit, but yes, the accounting standard says go ahead, put these intangibles on the balance sheet, but how do you go about and value it? The second is also lack of databases. So when we sit down and if there is a domestic M&A happening, some of the relief from, so we basically use a relief from royalty method, those databases are kind of lacking. So I think the whole ecosystem around the fair valuation needs to kind of it needs to build.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Because in fact, globally also, there is a dearth of valuation professionals, valuation advisors and auditors. And especially in India, I think we have just about completed a first phase of transition to
Yes.
Indian accounting standards right now. So what I would like to ask you is that when you don't have professional valuators right now, and even the clients are new, so then how do you approach a valuation exercise?
I think if you were to look about 15 years ago,
Yes.
So maybe just before the start of this century, if you picked up the balance sheets of companies, they were either full of tangibles, basically tangibles. There was very little impact of technology. Once a plant and machinery was installed, it would go on for years and years and years put together. Competition was still limited. Because of the fact that the competition was limited, business models were simpler. Just take a 15-year step forward and look at things as of now. You have a huge amount of intangibles in the balance sheets. Competition is fierce. Companies open and disappear. Either they are dissolved or they are taken over by someone else. So similarly, because of competition, the business models are becoming complex and complex.
Okay.
Technologies on which you may have spent a huge amount of money will not last maybe the number of years which you thought when you procured those assets. So because of all this, I think it is important that the concept of fair valuation, which has now come in, should be implemented, and it is something which is the need of the hour. Yes, there are issues. Yes, we have dearth of professionals. I don't know the number which we have. There are dearth of institutes who would be able to provide this kind of competence. But then, like everything else, this will also have a learning phase. Mm-hmm. So currently we are into our learning phase. Whatever that IFRS number is, I think it is 13, and we have the Ind-AS, which also happens to be a 113 just by chance. All these accounting standards, whether international or domestic, have not been in force for long periods of time. IFRS 13 came in, I think, somewhere in 2012 or 2013. As far as fair valuation is concerned, there were bits and pockets of fair valuation which were kind of there in the other standards, but a standard on fair valuation per se came only in 2013. So yes, there will be a difficult time. There will be a time when we will all feel a bit lost. We will definitely need professionals, but I think there is no dearth of people wanting to learn new things in this country. So this will open up new opportunities.
I completely agree. When it comes to valuation of intangible, which actually constitute a major piece, because rest of the things still one can, and probably way I have had experience in managing these things is more driven by learning from a lot of information or advice available outside India, and experts are there, be it a cost approach or be it a market approach or be it an income approach, and one can sort of do valuation of those intangibles. Most important is that how you disclose that and probably fairly assess year on year. That perhaps will be the right, and then it's something which is always evolving, but I am sure there can be a perfection which can be brought in. So it's not that challenging as we look at it. It becomes challenging because we really need to put in efforts in order to arrive at the right valuation metrics around. And being qualified professionals, we understand all these things. If not, there's enough knowledge available, and one can pick up that.
There are a whole lot of positives as well. I mean, I can just think of maybe a couple of them. The possibility to do fair valuation can actually lead to unlocking of dead assets. I mean, take the case of railways. I mean, they have got huge land banks. Take the case of any other public sector companies. They have also got huge land banks. If they were to kind of fair value it, you can imagine what it would do to the valuation of the company. Similarly, I mean, as I said, technology is kind of moves very, very fast. So if you have the possibility to kind of do impairment analysis and to be able to charge off whatever is kind of useless or whatever is something which is going to become obsolete, yes, it will have an effect on your P&L in the short run, and you will have to better plan it. But yes, fair valuation accounting or the possibility, gives you the option to be able to kind of move from one technology to the other, and also keep your books kind of cleaned up or maybe up to date with whatever is with whatever is kind of happening on the ground, so to say.
So how has the role of the CFO changed since we have been transitioning to this new standard? I mean, what are the new challenges that have come up? Has the job become easier or more, tougher for you people? Because there are no set standards for fair evaluation. It's an emerging field. People are just trying to understand. Professionals are coming up. So how is everything happening in organizations? How are you managing?
See, point is that valuation being done earlier also and now also. The only thing is now there is a standardized process which has come into place. There are certain, a transparent way of managing the fair valuation. My sense is that particularly, and in fact, this fair valuation is more, I would say, complicated, particularly when it is construction or infrastructure, those kind of businesses, versus other sectors. So it's less complicated, and again, it's from sector to sector, not necessarily across all. So therefore, I can relate many examples where I had spent my time in a pharma sector as an example, or even in the lighting sector or in the food sector, where challenges were not there, even not today even. It's so straightforward. So probably it depends on case to case, and I don't see it's a big challenge to address this fair valuation.
Let me try to add again to what Hani was saying. I belong to an industry where the challenges of fair valuation are actually galore. So I belong to a telecom gear manufacturer or a telecom gear infrastructure company where we have contract projects which run over periods of time. And when we price our offerings, the pricing is always bundled, because we not only offer equipment, we kind of install the equipment as well. We put it in a situation where the operator has to just press the button to kind of make it run. We manage the entire network for him also. Sometimes we also maintain the network for him. Now, in a situation like this where everything is kind of bundled, fair valuation requires me to kind of unbundle everything, attribute a value to it. There is no what is in a technical language called an observable market which is available, where I can go and pick up the fair valuation of each particular piece which I have sold to a operator. So the challenge in this case is immense. But then I would slightly disagree with my friend Anil here, where that this is a problem or a challenge which is restricted only to the infrastructure industry. Just take the airline industry, where the airlines gives you points for flying. Would you not have to defer some revenue for the points which you have already issued? Take the case of the banking industry, where you have cards where reward points are issued to you. Take all of us go to malls, and we have those those fancy cards which they keep giving us, on which we accumulate points. They have similar challenges. I can go on and on, but I can see somebody wavering the 5-minute card, Sangeeta, so I'll just leave it to Rajesh now.
Just if I could just add a couple of things, and this is what we have faced with our clients. And I think that as CFOs and as various party to the fair valuation exercise, you need to start the dialogue early.
Yeah.
speak to the auditors, speak to the board. If there is a particular transaction that you're looking at, just kind of get the parties involved so that there is no anxiety at the last minute. You basically have looked at a transaction. It's new, yes. Everybody knows that it's new. Even the auditors grapple with some of these issues. We've seen this. So I think engaging at the right time will save the controller or the finance function a lot of anxiety afterwards. I think engaging is the best way to deal with this.
So from your point of view, because you have your CV says that you've been involved in a lot of M&As, what are the post-acquisition impact of assertions made at the time of closing the M&A transaction? This has come from KNAV. So I would like to understand this part, and I think our CFOs may also want to understand that.
You see, this is something, if I understand the question correctly, what you're saying that you had made certain assertions, right, pre-M&A stage, and post these assertions, they don't come true, right? I think this is something which is very difficult in the sense that I had seen, I don't hesitate, it's a public thing, in the case of India's largest pharma company, Ranbaxy, when Daiichi Sankyo took over, and what we all know that in the very next year they had to write off investment to an extent of some $3 billion plus. I think this is one very exceptional example, but the regulatory changes, the compliances, and at times the competition, the technology changes, all these things, they lead to the assertion, or assumptions, what you thought of may not turn out to be positive. And therefore, it has a direct bearing on the valuation, which then one would need to address at that point of time. So again, and particularly in today's time, I mean, there are many examples where, this private equity funded investments, where there is a huge challenge today on the valuation. I've seen that investments made by private equity is become completely zero for many reasons, not to talk about. So I think fair valuation, as you said that, doing a homework before and after, so there could be, different challenges. So this is something which one will have to take a call at the time when they fall.
Thank all the panelists.